Yes,
I'm sorry.
Dump it in.
Sorry.
Dan's turn, still
Sorry.
here.
I apologize.
Young professionals are leaving Massachusetts for the same reason that employers are leaving Massachusetts. We have a high and climbing cost of living. Taxes continue to go up. Again, when people run for office, they talk about property taxes, but once they're elected, they don't do anything to solve the problem. To the contrary, tend to make things worse. In order to attract and retain quality employers in the Commonwealth, we need to do two things. We need to stop enacting legislation that says to businesses who are considering Massachusetts that we're a hostile environment for them, and we need to start giving incentives to come here. Now, there's a lot of talk about targeted incentives. The legislature and the governor put together packages for certain narrow industry sectors, and frankly, one of those industry sectors is big in this district, biotech and life sciences. And that's good as far as it goes, but frankly, biotech and life sciences companies come here because what I was discussing a few minutes ago, we have the human capital, we have the educational institutions, we have the centers of research and learning to attract those businesses, and they do come here. The problem is we're creating disincentives as we're giving them money out of one hand through $1 billion of targeted grants and other incentives doled out at government's discretion, and the notion that the government ought to be picking market leaders ought to send shivers down the spine of anyone who understands how markets work, as I know this audience does. Those businesses would benefit from a broad-based tax cut. Those benefits are hurt by a broad-based, those businesses are hurt by a broad-based tax increase, as was enacted in the waning days of this session. If we're putting money into the pockets of business to lure them with one hand and then reaching in with the other hand, taking it right back out, you know what, they're not going to come here, and it doesn't matter what industry sector they're in. As businesses leave, the professionals who work for those businesses leave. As property taxes continue to go up, people in my demographic, young professionals, they leave. These are my friends and neighbors, and I see it every day.
Thank you. No.
Thank you, Rick. I'm about jobs, jobs, and more jobs. I believe our entire system only works when our citizens have a good job and benefits. Each man and woman take care of their family to house, feed, and to educate them. When they can buy a house, food, and clothing, and finally to pay for their taxes, our government can provide the services that we need. I am for jobs, jobs, and more jobs. I am also for the rewards of business investing in our communities. Let us be clear, you cannot be for jobs and not be pro-business. One simply does not work without others. Now I'd like to just say something about what Dan just had to say about the Turnpike, and I want to thank all the endorsements that I got from all the different institutions and unions. However, Dan says that the Turnpike problem is that the people are overpaid. Now Dan's a lawyer, and he charges probably $400 an hour for a client. Now, obviously he has the silver spoon, and people on the Turnpike have a livable wage, and they need a livable wage to sustain their families, to educate their families, and it's a good job, and good jobs create good government. Thank you.
Right. Next question, I believe Dan will be the first up on this one. Municipalities are facing significant continuing costs in meeting retirement plans. That's also true in terms of state employees. Businesses typically provide defined contribution plans like 401ks. Why should our towns and state continue with higher cost defined benefit plans?
They should not. And I think that's another issue where, frankly, my perspective is different from that of my opponents, and different from the prevailing perspective on Beacon Hill. Retiree benefit costs are absolutely, in most cities and towns across the state, if not the largest line item in their budget, close to it and growing year over year. This is a well-known fact on Beacon Hill. It's one of the things that people talk about, pension reform. When they run for office, they talk about pension reform. When they're elected, they decide, well, maybe I'm not the one to push for that. because the retiree lobby is very, very strong, and for a good reason. And I have to be clear here. When the state has made a contract, or a city and town has made a contract with an employee, and that employee has worked and honored that contract, we can't be talking about rescinding that and saying to current workers or current retirees, you don't get the bargain that you worked for. We can, going forward, say to new employees, we've got a new deal for you. And 401ks, retirement benefits, more in keeping with the private sector. They work in the private sector. They can work in the public sector, but again, the feeling on Beacon Hill is that this is a third rail. You can't touch retiree benefits, and if we don't touch it, it's just going to continue as is. One of the things I've talked a lot about, and I've been glad to hear recently Carolyn has come over to my way of thinking, is municipal GIC, letting cities and towns purchase health care for health insurance for their employees through the same pool as the state, bigger pool, lower cost. Governor Patrick pushed through a bill that allows cities and towns to do that, but added a little kicker and allows municipal unions an absolute veto over a city and town's decision to do that, and for that reason only 5 municipal entities in the state have joined. That's the sort of thing that going forward ought to be mandated at the state level. It will save hundreds of millions of dollars, and it will go directly to the kinds of costs the question was addressing.
On the pensions, 401ks, I think that if a person takes on a lifelong job, that he is entitled to pay into his benefits and enjoy a pension after a 35-year working for a city or a town or municipality. I think that's his right. And if he wants to invest more money to a 401k, I think that is also his right. Grantia, contracts are negotiated at the level that it creates and becomes a benefit, and the cost is itemized into the benefit package. Carolyn.
I'd love to have a conversation with Dan about my position in the GIC, but that's for another day. As with business in the state, benefits are considered along with salaries in attracting good employees. If you look at teachers as an example, it is absolutely in our interest, in our local interest as towns, and also in our interest as businesses to educate our children well. We have a strong incentive to attract and retain good teachers. So if we look at benefits as as part of their salary, which we should, I mean, going forward, are there opportunities to look at this and talk about different ways to do this? Absolutely. Have we? My understanding is that a lot of these contracts and a lot of benefits have actually been moving more toward a 401k model, in that the participants are actually picking up a larger share of the cost than they were, a number of years ago. Is that something we can continue to discuss? Absolutely. And I think that's something that comes out in the negotiation with our teachers, I think, and other municipal employees. I think we need to look at this holistically. We need to look at it practically and find a way to pay our state and local employees in a way that retains the quality that we need.